You want to know how I got these scars?
Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?
I can't wait to show you all my wonderful toys.
Holly! That was a terrible Mark Hamill impersonation. Well, at least I wasn't too close to the microphone like you.
Yeah, yikes. I was trying to compensate for the grill that he had, and it whistled.
Well, someone who's a comms major should know better.
You're right.
Just being funny, I jest. No pun intended. So, hi, welcome to End Credit Reviews on episode of After the Credits on End Credit Reviews. This is Tyler from End Credit Reviews.
And Stephen Lawson from Stephen Lawson Studios.
And this, of course, is a review on Joker. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. We survived the screening of Joker!
Although there were a couple close calls.
Oh, yeah. Explain, Stephen.
Yeah, so, as I take it with most theaters, or maybe not, maybe it's just we're special, but the AMC that we went to see this film at, there was a police officer that clearly hadn't moved since the 1990s. And, this was his first time back on the scene.
Except to Dunkin' Donuts.
Right. In his car. And basically, we were wondering what the heck was happening, and they were saying, oh, there have been some credible threats about something potentially happening with the Joker, and they needed to see our IDs, and they were denying some people in, and so it was a little concerning, but ultimately we thought, we're grown boys, damn it, we'll take care of this. And then a couple times during the film, I don't know what it was about the theater, but the door would just kick open, like, and it was loud enough that for a split second, I'm like, here we go. Here comes the clip unloading into the audience.
Oh, that's pretty bad. Well, yeah, I mean, maybe slight paranoia in a way. Maybe that's probably happened in the past, but it just went over our heads.
Right.
In a way. But the thing is, when I went there, I expected something like that to happen, with what's been going on in the news. Mm-hmm. And when the person explaining the ticket thing, we all know why. We've seen on the news and that and social media.
Sure.
And she was saying, well, the Batman movie theater in California, which that's not where the Aurora Theater is at.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I just thought to myself, Batman's not even in the movie, and the Joker was not in The Dark Knight Rises.
That's true.
And we'll get back to that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. We'll definitely, that ties into the movie itself, part of its themes, but anyway, so this is our review on the movie Joker. So Joker is about, of course, our main character, Arthur Fleck, played by Joaquin Phoenix, taking place, of course, in the 1970s in New York City. Well, actually, Gotham City. I mean, it's hard to, not see it as New York City. Even though I think New York City was kind of the big influence of Gotham City, it was saying, although nowadays it has more in common with Chicago, I would say.
True, absolutely.
Yeah, artistically and that. So he's someone who has mental problems, who lives with his mother, and he's aspiring to become a comedian, and he sort of idolizes a comedian known as Murray Franklin, played by Robert De Niro, and he sort of has a romantic interest in his neighbor, Sophie, played by Zazie Beetz, played Domino in Deadpool 2. Mm-hmm. And this movie, of course, got a lot of praise and attention during the beginning, and, of course, has gotten a lot of course, controversy that's hard to, kind of not notice in that.
Sure.
And also the movie was directed by Todd Phillips. Now, of course, the guy has more of a comedic background with movies like Road Trip and Old School. I haven't seen those movies, but I've seen the Hangover trilogy, in which he directed. So this is one of, I don't know if it is his first movie into outside of comedy and more towards drama in a way. Not to say there isn't any attempts at humor in the movie, but it's definitely more of a drama in a way.
Yeah.
And I think he brought up a good point by saying how it's hard to make a comedy these days, especially a good one, because of how overly sensitive people are these days, and it's hard to really make a joke without thousands of people on Twitter going after your head.
That is very true, yeah.
And then, of course, after he said that, that kind of proved his point.
Exactly.
So, anyway, you can also respond to that, but
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say even Joaquin, I saw in interviews was like, enough of this garbage. Go see the damn movie, and that's what anyone with a brain would be thinking, you know. Not what do the internet PC police really say first about this? I need to protect my precious little mind.
and don't get me started on that really cringy video that he was on with it was it Jimmy Kimmel, not Fallon, but I think it was Kimmel, the guy on ABC.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, here's an outtake of an out of context clip where he's swearing at one of the crew members." In a way, it was, and the video has a lot of downvotes, like significant amount of downvotes. And the comments section was saying Joaquin Phoenix is really the cool guy and actually is too smart for him.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I'm seeing some similarities between him, a lot of the unfunny hacks nowadays on TV, and also with De Niro's character.
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, I know we're kind of hopscotching around this,
Back and
but
forth. Yeah.
so anyway, Steven, what did you think of Joker?
Well, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think it did, in many ways, it met my expectations. I was hearing such great reviews, and I knew the SJWs hated it, so it must be doing something right. And so I went in thinking, you know, let's see how this goes, but, you know, let's not prejudge too early. And I must say, I was a little underwhelmed based on the expectations the reviews were giving. You know, not that I looked a whole lot into it, but, you know, like it, obviously Oscar film of the year, and it's like, I can see where they're getting at it because, as is to be expected, Joaquin Phoenix is great. He has done films like Her, and in a lot of ways, aside from Heath Ledger, I mean, he makes a lot of sense for a Joker just for the roles he's played.
Yeah.
Of kind of someone who's isolated, who's very strange, and has played those types of roles.
Yeah, not mentally stable like the villain in Gladiator.
Right, and is so committed to it similarly. So I think that was a great decision. Certain other aspects of it were fine. And my biggest problem was the pacing was pretty doggone slow. Like, even compared to some slower films I've seen recently, this felt pretty agonizing at points in terms of the pacing. That isn't to say this isn't worth it by any means, but I think the audience, if they go to see this, will at points just be sitting there thinking, gosh, how many minutes was that? Yeah, I mean, how it's connected, they do, not to spoil things, but they connect, you know, kind of a little bit into Batman, not drastically, but, you know, it's pretty clear even from the previews that there's going to be a little nod to that, and the message behind it, I think, politically is very timely, and it certainly is a interesting and I guess I would say it should shake us to kind of see, you know, to a certain extent, even there was a preview before the film talking about, by the way, don't bully people who are mentally disabled, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, that at the beginning, I think, was silly, and to a certain extent, I think it's silly to play that protectionist. But at the same time, there is something, you know, in the message of it of we're closing a lot of the doors to people who really need help in the world today, and that was a strong message. You can disagree with certain elements of it, but the combination of Joaquin's performance, his relationship to his mother, and Thomas Wayne that's brought in a little bit, created an interesting dynamic. I guess we'll talk about at some point where we rank them in the Joker hierarchy, but he was a solid performance, I must say that.
Yeah, I really liked Joaquin's performance, of course, as the Joker, or just Joker in this one. And also, I mean, we've been talking a lot about the movie itself, and of course the controversy it's stirred up, which kind of ties to the themes of it. But anyway, I mean, one thing I wanted to mention here was that it was confirmed that originally this movie was never even supposed to be a Joker movie to begin with. Originally, Todd Phillips wanted to tell an original story about a man who seemed like his whole life was a joke, but then in order to get it made, he had to tie it in with a well-established character like Joker, which sadly kind of goes to show that it seems like originality in mainstream movies seem to be pretty frowned upon unless you're someone as big as Nolan or Spielberg in a way.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, so sadly there's not much risk taking. You have to have it as a well-known brand because, face it, things like the Joker and of course many fictional characters like Batman had to start off somewhere. You had to introduce it to the public first and eventually it grew throughout time. Because they had to start off somewhere small. A lot of these original movies had to start off somewhere. Because if Hollywood, was in the mindset they are nowadays in many years ago, then there's so many original movies that would never even exist. That way they would not take a chance with unless it was a big established director behind it. But also, the other thing I thought about concerning wise is that is kind of what a minor problem I have with the Heath Ledger, or at least the kind of the Nolan Batman movies, is kind of in a way, as Coppola would say, playing creative havoc with the source material, where it's seen as fine to kind of stray too much away from the source material just to bend stuff around to where it starts to share not much resemblance to the character itself or necessarily the source material. And I feel like what's kind of the point of shifting so much around from the character, make it based off of that, where you're going to change so much about it. I mean, sure, Dracula and Frankenstein from the 30s are movies that aren't necessarily the most accurate versions of those books, but they're classics in their own right. Although I would like to see more, as much as I love, Bram Stoker's Dracula, partially because it's very accurate to the book compared to other big mainstream movie versions of the character, it kind of makes me wonder, like, how much are you going to respect the source material? And it concerns me when people adapt something and then they just do whatever they want. So, I don't have much confidence that when they do that at times. But this one, I felt like they did a decent enough job with that, at least the core of the character in certain ways.
Sure.
But it does disappoint me that an original movie had to tie in with a well-established character to do that. At least it wasn't doing the whole identity politics thing, like we're seeing this ad right now on IMDb with Batwoman, as geeks and gamers would call it.
Yeah.
Her time is now.
Or not, because no one will watch.
I'm not even kidding. They made that song just for the trailer. It's like a pre-existing song. It's like the identity politics theme song.
Yeah.
I'm a woman. This is my fight song. Take that my life song.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say I agree with quite a bit of that. Not sure all of the Nolan stuff I completely agree with.
Well, minor problem.
Sure, yeah. But I will say that even going into this, I was a little worried that this would be something it's not supposed to be at all, because I think I'd heard some mention of that, basically this being something else than Joker and turning into it. But also, quite frankly, the preferred, origin of the Joker for me is that we don't know it. Like a lot of, in the comic, there's the thing with, basically it gets dipped in the acid or the chemicals.
I like that one the best.
I do not. I find that's way too, okay, cookie cutter, move on to the next thing. I have always appreciated the mystery behind the Joker, and that's part of what makes him so terrifying.
Well,
So going into this, I was skeptical. But I think this did a decent balance of trying to be something down to earth and a bit different, but still pay homage to that relative sort of narrative. Not identically. There was, a physical condition involved that explained some things that were different, and certain other details were fleshed out about his life as it would need to be in a 2-hour film. But it was tasteful, I would say.
I mean, what I was trying to say was that even with some stuff of his origin, there is, some mystery and mystique to his character. For example, in Batman, the animated series, they do show he got dipped into chemicals and he did have a criminal background, but we didn't really know a lot about his life. Even in one of the episodes, they said his backstory life is a little bit unknown. All they knew that he, joined a mob at one point in time. So there is a bit of mystique to it, but I do like how at least they show how that happened. And, it's again from the source material, and it's part of, a fictionalized comic book character. That what makes it interesting escapism. But also I think we should kind of talk about the supporting cast in the movie.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
So I felt like Robert De Niro being in this movie as the kind of stand-up comedian late night talk show host was no coincidence.
Yeah.
Because he played a character that was very similar, of course, to Joaquin Phoenix's character in this movie called Taxi Driver from the 70s, in which he played a deranged, mentally unstable guy that dabbled, of course, into nihilism, which also took place in the 1970s because that was a time period in which that movie was made in, which was an interesting kind of parallel with that. And also, I heard the two actors were kind of iffy working together because they have two completely different types of acting work ethics.
Yeah, that's true.
And that sort of deal. I mean, nothing really bad, I would say, but they just kind of were a little bit mildly at odds, like stable in that.
Plus, there's also, I mean, just to dip in real quick, the fact that a lot of people could argue that De Niro, at this point in his career, it has become, to a certain extent, not that he's a comedian or anything, but kind of that prestige symbol that's getting a little bit out of touch and, in with the elite circles of his class, that kind of fit into the overall narrative as well in real life. I don't necessarily think that was, at least, oh yeah, well that's completely our rationale behind hiring him, but it also supports the cause and just, his casting for the public's view, I would say. So.
Well, he was also in a movie called The King of Comedy, I think. It may have been a Scorsese movie. He used to be the regular Scorsese, and he's going to be in a movie with him called The Irishman, I think. That's like a Netflix movie. Also, another familiar face is Zazie Betts as Sophie, a neighbor woman that Arthur has, feelings for. And it was, she's not in the movie that much, but, she played, of course, Domino in Deadpool 2. And I guess I kind of saw it coming, the twist, later on in the movie, but I felt like it made sense and I liked it. But we can talk about spoilers stuff later.
Yeah, sure.
But one woman that stood out, the actress who plays Arthur's mother, is Frances Conroy, no connection to Kevin Conroy,
yeah.
the voice of Batman. And she was actually in another DC movie, Catwoman.
Yikes. Doing your community service, I see.
Yeah, that slops low than her boobs in the movie.
Yo, no.
That was supposed to be
demonetized.
That was supposed to be like one of those skits from like Red Letter Media where they say a very distasteful joke, and then you hear like crickets.
Yeah.
I know everyone gets old in that, so sorry, just a mild joke.
No, don't apologize.
I know I'm not like, well, I don't want to dabble too much into the Hangover style of comedy where it's like, we won't name him, but he loves those kind of movies where it's like, it's funny, but let's be serious here for a moment.
I despise that. Oh my gosh, don't even get me started.
Yep, apologetic humor.
Yes, exactly. Great word for it. Great term.
On the spot, copyright and creator reviews, 2019.
2019, yep.
Anyway, so also Brett Cullen usually plays as the stereotype upper guy who's like a prick in that,
Mm-hmm.
plays Thomas Wayne in the movie. I did hear originally that a real life prick was supposed to play him, named Alec Baldwin. And well, he was originally supposed to play him, but for some reason turned it down, which made sense why De Niro was at his roast on Comedy Central. Which, by the way, I don't know if you heard, but that was one of the lowest ratings of any of the roast on Comedy Central.
Was it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, barely anyone showed up. I watched some clips of it. I'm like, it's not really as funny as I thought, so I'm glad I just skipped it
Yeah.
in that. But yeah, I mean, we'll talk about spoilers in that coming up soon.
Mm-hmm. I can definitely see, though, you mentioning Alec Baldwin. That makes so much sense to me, especially if you've seen the movie Glengarry Glen Ross or 30 Rock.
I've never watched 30 Rock, but sorry, 30 Rock,
30
not
Walk?
Walk.
The Asian version.
30 Walk.
It's basically 30 Rock has been bought by a Chinese corporation and is just made in the big tower in China now.
Where the plots around the the community service currency. Anyway, so back to the movie review itself, and there's definitely, because of the controversy behind the movie, I definitely saw it as sort of themes, because there's a lot of people that feel the way that Arthur feels. In a way, they kind of feel kind of isolated, overlooked by society,
Oh yeah.
sort of marginalized in a certain way. And really, people just kind of shrug it off and say like, oh, whatever, kind of deal. Because eventually, stuff like that, not going without check, kind of boils over.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of these, killings and that are happening. And of course, that goes into, a lot of the mental problems in this, country, of course. Because, like Arthur in the story, that's very reliant on medication, and that is that we are one of the most heavily medicated countries in the world. And the thing is that, of course, the media just makes things worse by really propagating it, which, of course, goes into the controversy, actually the very manufactured controversy, where it's like, okay, we can't really seem to enjoy going to the movie for escapism without having to have that sort of thing in the back of our mind that is going to inspire someone to do something terrible.
Sure.
Because they are desperate for ratings, and it's been really bad like this for this past decade. And I think they really need to be held responsible at some point in time.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's probably never going to happen, or we'll literally have to wait until the cows come home. But I sympathize with that tremendously. And also, I mean, in the film, as someone who tends to, not to get political, but leans a little left on this subject, they kind of clearly show that the, things are being shut down based on, policies that are happening in the city, clearly tying into, we'll blame the rich people. And there's similar things that are happening in, big cities. So while Tyler's talking about how people are being over-medicated, at the same time, the people who need medication are not getting access to it because the people who don't need it are being medicated, and the ones that do need it aren't getting access to it. So it's a real screwed up situation that is, in addition to the, increasing tensions rising, it seems, across the country, really just pouring gasoline on the fire of, these extreme events. And so it is a timely film in what it is, and some people could see it as like too overtly political, but I personally think it was at least tasteful-ish. But I don't know how you feel about that.
I mean, in a way, I can see what you're saying. In a way, it kind of reminds me of these, scumbags that go around Walmart in those, movable carts and are not handicapped.
Yeah.
I personally think they should really change that, where that will only work if you have your handicap card to activate it. So that way people who obviously don't need that will do that sort of thing. And it's like, I just hate people like that just do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would be all for that, because I was thinking, at first, well, you could just tell them to stop, but let's be real. You can't actually take action against these people. They're going to be like, make me, and then you can't do it because that would be too much. So
Yeah, I mean, the thing, well, also during that time period, of course, there was a bit of a recession going on, which of course affected a lot of things financially and economically, and that's why there's a lot of trash, which we're kind of seeing very similar to big cities nowadays, of course, with San Francisco and Los Angeles, where of course their homeless problem has the homeless population has been growing
it's
and
rampant.
yeah, and trash has been piling up too. It's funny, it's kind of hypocritical. They are trying to be environmentally conscious, but it seems like you have a bunch of trash piling up.
Yeah.
If you want to do some change, then try, disposing of that. And also, it's been said that if you feed a person a fish, you just feed them for one day, but if you teach them how to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. So in a way,
Unless you own the river. But,
well, you get what the saying is,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I feel like a lot of that sort of deal where people just feel like, Arthur's character just feel kind of abandoned by certain circumstances, because not everyone's life is going to be good. That's just, how it is, with people. Some people have it better than others, some have it worse than others, and that sort of deal. And in a way that does contribute to the Joker's nihilism, which of course is a common characteristic, and I feel like it's very rampant, of course, in today's generation, which I have a video essay kind of talking about that in a way where they encourage that sort of thing, where the erosion of, traditional values and that, which I feel like really should be trendy back, maybe in the next generation, maybe the Z generation people will bring that back. But anyway, I don't want this video to turn into like some NPR video. Yeah. But I did like some of the more artistic parts about the movie, where it just wasn't being a regular comic book movie at times, which I did like. And I did like the whole parts where some of the funny stuff, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna punch out, and literally punches out the punch out clock.
Yeah, that was funny.
And a sign says, "Don't forget to smile," and he just crosses out says "Don't smile."
Yeah, it says "Don't smile" afterward. That was great.
Yeah, and I mean, in a way, you kind of sympathize with him because of a messed up background he had, but at the same time, you kind of don't agree with some of the actions he does in response. Because a lot of people have said that with Batman's characters, that he had tragedy done to him, but instead of taking out on others, he decides to try to help others and go out of his way to, protect people and actually try to make things better for others. Unlike, the Joker and other Batman villains, where something tragic might have happened to them, but yet they decided to kind of take it out on others in a way. So in a way, it does show that duality of that character. So in a way, he is very much I don't want to say anti-hero, but in a way someone who is the protagonist, but it's one of those kind of movies, just because you're the protagonist doesn't mean you're the good guy in that. But what else did you want to say?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty fair. I think anti-hero might be relatively the right term for it. It may be a little that may be a little too much credit, but because clearly anyone who's sane after this will realize, yeah, I mean, you shouldn't do quite what you did, to put it kindly. But that's not to say he doesn't have legitimate grievances and things like that. So, forgot what else I was going to say on the subject, but I thought we were, I guess at some point we should get into spoiler territory about a couple things.
Okay, we can do that now.
Yeah, let's.
So fast forward to this part if you don't want to be spoiled. So here it goes.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you, because I was looking for it in the nonsense I was hearing from the PC police about, oh well, it's so problematic how Joaquin Phoenix's Joker is like putting his misogyny on women and like subjecting them. And I mean, I was looking for that, and I honestly thought there were maybe two situations. Either A, and this is a big spoiler, he kills his mom, or B, they could have been implying that the woman who played Domino was raped. But I didn't get a definitive indication that was the case.
Yeah,
I wanted your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the whole rape thing even crossed my mind at all. I felt like he was just being delusional, kind of like the plot twist of Fight Club in a way. But the thing is, it just felt like, a fantasy. Like, that never, like the whole thing of that happening, no, that never, crossed my mind whatsoever. But the other big thing about, he's kind of trying to cut his ties with the past in a way, trying to feel like, oh, isn't it so funny that the woman that I've loved for the most is the one that's actually abused me and done terrible things and that, and part of what can, why I probably inherited some mental problems from her.
Sure.
In ways, not to say that mental problems are inherited all the time. Mm-hmm. I'm not, a psychiatrist whatsoever, obviously.
Yeah. No, get your prescription advice from us, absolutely. I'm kidding.
Yeah, we got stock in that. Yeah. But they do, not we. Right. But the thing is, that was kind of the whole thing with it. And I just feel like it was kind of one of the many BS excuses that certain critics are giving. In a way, it was kind of like the excuses they were given for why they didn't like Godzilla King of the Monsters. Yep. Because, how dare they make an antagonist in the movie someone who wants to commit, genocide for, climate, related things, which is kind of a cliched, villainous reason I've noticed these days. Mm. Oh, that was just as Steven Schilder.
Sorry. Big lummox here.
And that one's a knock from the media. You've been talking crap about
PC
it.
Police, open the door.
They're probably like Joe from the Three Stooges. Not so hard. That hurts.
Exactly. We want to knock the door aggressively, but not to trigger you.
We can't even make a fist properly.
Yes. Or the OK symbol, because that's...
Oh yeah, I briefly saw kind of that with Joaquin Phoenix's character at one point. Oh no, look at Oprah Winfrey throwing those up, and then, oh, she's bad.
I did not hear any though, which was good. So that will count our blessings there. Maybe it was internal.
Yeah, the awkward kiss when he goes on that talk show.
Yeah.
What did you compare it to?
Oh, what did I... it was Joe Biden kissing these little girls.
And then I compared it to like when Al Gore pretty much made out with Hillary Clinton. It was like, what just happened? I mean, also you can kind of say Adrian Brody with Halle Berry when he won an Academy Award.
All I can think of when you say Adrian Brody is nose.
Yeah, painfully miscast in Predators. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I'm such a hardened mercenary. And that.
Nasal predators, maybe, but other than that.
Yeah, so I think Halle Berry is probably fearing for her life when that happened. Like, please don't poke my eye out.
Oh no, in 3D.
That was a Family Guy skit. Now back to Adrian Brody doing crunches.
Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah, so anyway, with spoiler stuff, I did like the climax of the movie when Joker was kind of talking about how hopeless he is in a way. Mm-hmm. But, De Niro, I mean, you can kind of disagree with him. Obviously, he is not from the same walk of life. But at the same time, I do kind of agree with De Niro, like, just because feeling down about yourself, that taking others' lives isn't going to solve all your problems and that sort of thing. And again, it's like an Uncle Ben moment with great power comes great responsibility and that sort of thing, which obviously, a villain character like the Joker, obviously that, doesn't really seems to accept that.
And I made a new line for this movie, by the way. With great Glock comes great opportunity. But anyways.
Yeah, but yeah, the thing was, I did like that climax in a way. I'm surprised they didn't cut to commercial break during any moment during that. But also, the part where he kills the three guys in that, the media describes as little martyrs in a way. Mm-hmm. Even though we didn't really know much about them personally, we obviously know the context of they were hitting him and he defended himself. I mean, yeah, he kind of went after one and executed the last one.
Sure.
In a way, like that's when he went obviously more villainous.
Mm-hmm.
But when the first two that he killed, obviously in self-defense, so he was more in the right when that happened.
Right.
In a way, it kind of reminds me of these people in the news. I won't really name the names, but you probably know what I'm talking about. Where they say like, "Oh, this innocent person got killed," even though they completely leave out the context of any criminal background or any other thing that led up to said event.
Sure, I get
that happened.
Yeah.
And of course, what kind of goes into the whole response of the people showing up as clowns are kind of like these people in these protests of identity politics and that getting swept into it in a way. And it just shows more of a, of course, a division, and of course people like to call it clown world these days.
Oh boy.
And yeah, in a way we are kind of seeing similar to that, where people are more divided and distanced from each other, but I feel like people should, in a way, just not be so paranoid. There's a lot of cool stuff happening in the world, folks. Maybe the news should talk more about that. And then start, a conversations with people, in a way. Because there's people I've known, of course, in college and through life I've got to know. And, of course, I don't agree with them on a lot of things. And even Steve and I, we're best friends. We, of course, have our disagreements.
Sure.
But the thing is, we're pretty chill, and we... a lot of times see eye to eye, and I try to see, what the commonalities I have with people, because I feel like that's really our strength, not necessarily our differences, necessarily. And so anyway, not to try to sound like a whole kumbaya.
Yeah, absolutely. Come together. I feel the same way, though, that it is important, in the context that we're talking about, that, we do see the commonalities, because that is... especially the people that are making money off of the whole situation of propagating this, hostile environment. The last thing they want is for the money train to stop by, making people realize, calm down a little.
The last thing I want is people getting along despite their differences.
That's right.
And actually wising up to the people causing the real problem.
Exactly. Well put.
Yeah, it's kind of like the fable of the lion and the boar, where the two are just kind of fighting, and then one of them notices these vultures watching, licking their lips in that, or, whatever, vultures have. I don't think vultures have lips, but yeah, their beaks.
Their beaks.
And
They're
one
peckers.
of them realizes no matter who, dies and that, they'll just feast on us, so let's just stop.
True.
For their amusement. Which is an interesting kind of fable, in a way, from Aesop's fables, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Really excellent lesson, I would say.
Shout out to the boy.
Yeah. Also, we pointed something out. They were passing like a video game arcade, and they're talking about the media, like, oh, this movie will appropriate violence. It's kind of like the stupid thing, violence in video games.
Right.
Even though ever since the invention of video games, murder rates have actually gone down.
Yes, we all have seen the archaeological evidence and artifacts of, during the first civilization, the Nintendo Negative 64 being invented and causing the first murders to take place.
Oh yeah, playing Pong from someone went back in time. Some guy played Pong and inspired him to assassinate Archduke Ferdinand that caused World War I to happen.
Yes. I don't know what it is about Pac-Man, but I have a strong urge to assassinate an important political figure.
Oh no, playing Tetris made me radicalized.
Yes. It's so lame. But...
Yeah, lamer than Batwoman, I guess, eh?
Correct.
I'm a woman!
Oh, no.
I would rather watch Batman and Robin over that, because I'd rather watch something that's bad but I can laugh at it.
Sure.
Opposed to cringe bad.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, so I think maybe we probably pretty much said what we could about the movie, but so what would you give this movie, Steven?
Well, I've said a lot of my 2 cents on it. Joaquin was great. The mom was pretty good. I don't think I talked about De Niro much, but he was pretty decent, and I agree with a lot of Tyler's sentiment that he, despite, his role being a little out of touch possibly in his portrayal, he still had some advice that was true and down to earth for introspection. But in any case, I thought it was overall a very well shot film. The narrative was pretty cohesive. The performance, of course, I've said it like 4 times now, of Joaquin was great, as I was expecting it would be. The score was pretty solid. I thought the kind of sad choral thing was, or not choral, but or the sad orchestral violin thing really worked for it and was different and distinct from the other Joker themes we've heard. But with all of that yabba dabba doo being said, I think that it was a solid film, a little overhyped for what it is, but still very much worth seeing. And if I had to give it a grade that was honest, I would say somewhere between an 88 to a 90% is what I would give it.
Wow, cool. Okay. Well, personally, before I get into my thoughts on the movie, review of it, I just wanted to say a few things. One was that I pointed out to Steven, but I don't know if it was intentional or not, but the type of font for the, talk show for De Niro's character was the type that's Plaza, which is the same text font for Batman the Animated Series.
True.
Which I thought, that's pretty cool. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but probably was intentional in some way. Because I'm like, I love that, font, because it reminds me of my favorite version of Batman, of course, my favorite TV show of all time. Mm-hmm. And also, a funny thing I didn't tell you about earlier, but I'm going to say it now. Before going to see this movie, I went to visit my grandma, and I was telling her that I was going to see this movie, and her initial response was like, yuck, I wouldn't pay $2 to see that movie. Now, keep in mind, in my grandma's defense, she's not really into those comic book or horror movies,
sure.
And she's 80-plus years old, too. Yeah. So just, keep that in mind, and I respect her opinion on it, and, I was amused by it.
She'll be seeing Downton Abbey next week, right?
I don't know if she's into that show, unlike you-know-who. We won't name names. Yeah, he'll probably go see Cats in a trench coat.
To Fap.
Yeah, as much as I like that musical, at least I have standards to say no. And, but yeah, I really like how this movie looked at times. Visually, there were some impressive scenes, and I do feel like the director, Todd Phillips, proves that he's outside of comedy, can do some very artistic work, which I did like about it. And again, I've already said it kind of disappoints me that this movie was originally supposed to be an original movie, but they changed it up to be Joker, so it'll be more marketable and profitable. And also, again, kind of playing, like I like to, it's been called creative havoc with, certain characters that I just don't like how, it just shows a lack of understanding or respect for source material when they, change so much up about the character from that. But I gotta praise Joaquin Phoenix's performances as the Joker, and I'm not someone who likes to rank it with the live-action Jokers in certain ways, because I feel like all of them have their strengths and weaknesses. Most would agree it's better than Jared Leto. I think one person really brought up a great point by saying that, this Joker did not need a tattoo to say that he was damaged at all. And that I feel like this is, again, the more mature version, not just because it's rated R. And yeah, it's not, stupid, like, oh, trendy, look at what's in now. This one is kind of like a deranged Ronald McDonald, is what it looked like.
That's true.
And yeah, I did like the supporting cast in the movie as well. And I did like the twist involving Arthur's character about, Thomas Wayne and his mom as well. That happens in the second half of the movie. Mm-hmm. I'm like, it's interesting in a way. And with that said and done, I felt like, again, interesting movie, not great. I wouldn't say this is like one of the best movies of the year, but a solid movie. And it's interesting to see how the DC extended universe is, shaping up to be and kind of morphing altogether. But who knows, at this rate, they could easily surpass the MCU, because people are saying after Endgame, it seems like the MCU is kind of going to implode and people are going to probably lose interest. So who knows? This is Warner Brothers and DC's opportunity to rise up, I would say.
Absolutely. Hear us now, quote us later. We've been saying this behind the scenes, and people are like, oh, crazy, you're just DC idiots. And it's like, You wait on that. I mean, there is a clear narrative of DC is picking up and Marvel is starting to slack. So
Tortoise in the hair.
yes, be sure to save this video and come back later and see if we were right.
Okay. But I mean, we both like Marvel and DC comic book movies.
Very
and
true.
That
Yes.
we're not just shilling for either one.
No.
And also, I did like the interesting kind of commentary on it. It wasn't like beating you over the head with stuff. It wasn't. I mean, there was a certain kind of messages it had, but I felt like it was sort of fair and not necessarily biased in a way. It wasn't trying to paint either side necessarily as the bad or
The
whatever.
enemy. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was more like you understood these characters. And with that said, I know I've said this before several times in the review, trying to wrap it up, but I keep having multiple endings like Return of the King
Yeah.
or Spider-Man 3. So as for Joker, I would give it about 3 stars out of 4.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, good, but not great, and more competent than other comic book movies out there.
If you had to, I know this is a little on the spot, but where, in terms of Jared Leto,
At the bottom,
well, obviously, Jared Leto, Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger, and Joaquin Phoenix, where of the live-action Jokers, roughly initial after seeing this, where would you put him?
well, it's kind of hard to tell at first. I did like what he brought to the performance and that, and I think it's kind of, mildly shoulder to shoulder with Heath Ledger in some ways. I mean, I do prefer the Jack Nicholson one in live action the most because he's the most accurate to the source material, and I think he had a great performance as a Joker. And of course, my personal opinion is that Mark Hamill will always be the best Joker
Sure, yeah.
from the DC animated universe
Yeah.
in a way. And yeah, I do think this movie is interesting how people compare and contrast various like Jokers, of course. Every new generation has their own different one.
Bound to happen. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we both said regardless, I mean, this movie is going to be easily better than the next one, which is Birds of Prey.
Yeah.
I remember you were saying by one movie trailer, you're like, I'm going to pass out like a kidney stone. And as soon as the trailer started to play for Birds of Prey, I said, speaking of kidney stones.
Talk about a pisser. Yeah. No, I guess just for me, real quick, in terms of the Jokers, if I had to give a quick ranking, I agree with Tyler about Jared Leto. He's last. I prefer
Lower than Cesar Romero from the Adam West show.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. Talking about movies, though, I guess overall, I guess he's technically was in a movie, right?
Yeah,
but yeah.
the 60s Batman movie.
But in any case, I'm a little more. I like my more down to earth. In the case of Batman and Iron Man, especially. So I'm gonna have to disagree. I would put Nicholson third, and I would put probably Joaquin second currently. This is astounding, but I mean, he still knocked it out of the park so hard in, just the amount of screen time he had that I think Joaquin is great, but it's just not the same. So that's my 2 cents.
I get you. I think it'd be more refreshing to see a more comic book accurate version of the Joker in live action that we haven't gotten in 30 years.
Sure.
In that. So anyway, this is Tyler from Main Credit Reviews.
And Steven from Steven Lawson Studio.
And we hope you enjoyed this episode of After the Credits on Main Credit Reviews. And of course, we survived. This is not our ghostly spirits talking about it. Just go out and enjoy this movie. Go enjoy life, okay? Don't try to live your life and just, fear whatever the news, media tells you to. So just enjoy stuff in that, and it's better to enjoy life without being so fearful. Good one. So anyway, please like and subscribe.